All right, hello there. Welcome everybody. This is the Kubernetes SIG Architecture Community Meeting for January 30th, 2020. And I will share my screen. All right. So there were no action items from the last meeting. Looking just our standard agenda, so we don't need to worry about that. I would like to request that anybody, it's been a while since we had an update from the tech debt research team. So if anybody's on that team, I'd like to just put it out there that we'd love to hear from you next meeting, which is in 2 weeks. And next item on the agenda, there's a pretty light agenda today, but we'll move through it as we can. There is the Contributor Summit coming up in the end of March, and of course KubeCon. So anybody here that is interested in submitting a talk, the CFP is still open, I think, until February 7th. So please go ahead. I think that we'll probably submit one for production readiness, but beyond that, I'm not aware of anything. At the Contributor Summit for SIG-Arch, we do have a intro and status update in the larger KubeCon conference. All right, with that, I guess we can move on to sub-project readouts. And we've got Liget up. This week, we have API review and conformance sub-projects. Jordan, you want to give us a readout on API review?
Sure. Let me share my screen. Oh, you can't. I can't because you're sharing.
Oh.
All right. So I wanted to just highlight the things in the 118 milestone that involve API changes. There are the two right at the top are the oldest ones in the list. These are the certificate signing request API and ingress v1. That is the priority for API review. This ties into the conformance efforts to make sure that all the APIs that we depend on for bringing up clusters are at v1 or higher. And so getting these two specific APIs graduated will enable that. Ingress is targeting graduation to v1 this release. Certificate signing request is making progress in beta to complete some of the work that was identified, and then is targeting v1 in 119. There are various and sundry other proposals that are still making their way through the review process. One that has been particularly thorny is the IP family handling, which affects affects services. Clayton and Tim and I have been working through some of the issues with that. And so that is influencing how we're looking at other proposals to add fields to existing types. So expect to see some of the guidelines updated. We made some mistakes. Fortunately, it was still in the alpha phase for the IP family field, but in thinking through how to fix those mistakes, it's just getting thornier and thornier. So this is why we do alphas and why we figure things out before we enable them for everybody. But the likely outcome will be that making changes to existing objects will be more restricted in the future, which is unfortunate. But those are the main things I wanted to call out. Feature freeze, or the design freeze, was this past week, and so a lot of these they're final designs are in, and some of them passed API review already. Some of them are deferring API review to the implementation, which is fine. But we're working through those as we proceed in 1.18.
So Jordan, do we have, one thing I haven't never quite been clear on from the API review program is, do we have an idea of that we have the reviewer bandwidth? Like, I don't know if we have, I guess you've got a kind of bench of folks that you've run up over the last year or two. I guess my point is, if we need like extra review, does this look normal to you, the amount, and that we'll have enough capacity, or we need to start thinking about, recruiting or pushing people?
We're always thinking about recruiting. That's part of why whenever we are doing reviews, we're trying to pair with people from that SIG and that component to make sure that they're getting context and getting trained so that they can start doing those reviews as well. It's always hard to tell at this point in the release. Yeah. There's a lot of ambitious things, and a fair number of them don't actually even make it to the implementation point to where they are ready to be reviewed. Yeah. So,
okay.
I would say this: if these all arrived at a consistent pace throughout the release, we would have bandwidth for it. But if they arrive at their typical 1 week before code freeze, please review it now, then we will not have bandwidth for it. And that's
nothing new there.
So for anyone who wants reviewer bandwidth, get your implementation done like in the first quarter of the development cycle and schedule a review meeting, and you will have much better success.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right, up next, Hippie Hacker is going to discuss the conformance subproject. Do you want to share? Or are you good with it?
I think we're good with the, we've got some links if you want to follow them. But the main thing is on the front page of apisnoop.cncf.io. Our core conformance, so our stable coverage is up 2% from 30.37 over the holidays to 32.42. And a lot of that coming from finally merging PRs that the team has been working on and getting them promoted. So we had a lot of promotions and a lot of, the velocities increased. And that's been in part due to the test writing workflow improvements that we've been ingraining in the team to start with issues that are well researched for a particular endpoint and look at the documentation, and we use our biweekly conformance meetings to move those from the unsorted into the sorted backlog, so that those, we kind of get approval that this is a good test, and that we have sample code blocks that say, we will actually run those code blocks to see that they actually hit in cluster and increase. So the ticket itself can say precisely how many endpoints this approach will cover as far as increasing our endpoint coverage, as well as getting agreement on how the test will operate before we write the test. So those issues then can very straightforwardly turn into pull requests that are well written and easy to get merged because we've already agreed it's a good approach. And then 2 weeks after those merge, we're able to easily get them promoted because it's already been agreed that it's a good idea. So this has been great. There's been less back and forth on the merges, an agreement, and less on the promotions. And this is all kind of powered by our in-cluster workflow using something we're calling Kubemax. So it's kind of our literate pair programming in the sky. That's been a lot of fun, and if anybody's interested, I'm sure I'm going to try to put a talk together for the Contributor Summit or some other events to get some exposure on that. John and Jeff are continuing on the behaviors with the goal of converting our existing coverage metrics by Amsterdam, which I'm super excited to see. And the other point is our blocking PR status jobs. We finally got the CNCF API Snoop and the CNCF conformance working group repos connected to Prowl. and we have the cow and the various small things. But the first jobs that have been set up are to create all of the API Snoop images. And that's now done. The next steps are establishing our baseline for comparison. And we've got shared agreement on CI, Kubernetes, EGC, GCI, GCE as the job that we will compare, and that runs every 4 hours. So in the near future, API Snoop.cncfdao will be dynamically updated every time that job runs to give us a new baseline that will compare the PRs against and list the specific endpoints that are either added and untested or added and conformant. So each PR, you will know which PR increased, and then later on we will start disallowing ones that remove coverage. And that's the conformance sub-project update. Back to you, John.
Okay, any questions from anybody there? All right, we're moving right along today. Last thing on the agenda, Clayton. Is Clayton here?
I don't see him on the call, but I read the issue and I commented. The issue is about the naming of taints due to the Urban Dictionary definition of it versus the well-established computer science literature. So I think at this stage of the game, just because there's so much history there and it would require making such drastic changes across the API that it would break so many people. I'm opposed to this. I don't know what other people think, though.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're adults here. We can.
Like, I'm sensitive to complaints about words like, masters and slaves. I get that.
Yeah.
The new one I heard recently was blacklist and whitelist, and I was like, get out of here. Like, I'm not sure I buy that.
Yeah, I kind of buy that one.
I don't buy that.
I don't buy it for taints.
Yeah.
The gang scheduling is another one that we rejected, I think, for good reasons. For this one,
If this had been raised before it became part of the API,
Right.
and there was a reasonable alternative, then it would be a much more reasonable time to talk about it. But
Right.
there are legitimate and inoffensive definitions of the word, and it's a well-established term, and we realistically cannot drop the current term. We could add a second one, but that wouldn't really accomplish anything.
Just
Yeah.
cause
And
confusion.
it's not actually, the Urban Dictionary definition isn't actually a word, right? It's a slang. It's a slang abbreviation.
Right. I agree.
And honestly, it never even crossed my mind until today. So thanks for that.
Now that's stuck in your head. All right.
Should I just strike it and close the issue and mention this meeting and time and decision?
Tell them we'll fix it in API version 2.
No, don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim, if you want to summarize and close it, that sounds fine to me.
yeah, some words are worth a heroic effort, but this one is not.
And honestly, we're not doing another pet set.
Node minion to node.
All right. Sounds like that is it. Open discussion. Any comments or questions? Otherwise, we get like 45 minutes back. Awesome. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful 2 weeks. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye-bye.
Thanks.